Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel for my concluding thoughts about Duel in the Dark. Um, I am just going to come out and say it, as I often do with games that I like, that I think this is a really, really good game. It is a good representation of the British bombing campaign against Germany, and while it may not have a level of detail to it that the more demanding player, say, would want out of something like this, there are simulations out there with a great deal more granularity. But this one, I think, hits a sweet spot because it takes the essence of what was important strategically about this campaign and it just presents that. It strips it down to the brass tacks and presents it to players. So both the German and the British sides have the key things they have to worry about without worrying about what altitude you're going to order your bomber stream to fly at, what type of fuel levels, what type of ordnance, which particular squadrons you're going to assign to pathfind for the bombers. The British player is presented with a simple task. There's your bomber stream. You're going to decide where it starts from, what your target is, and most critically, how you're going to get it there, minimizing your own casualties along the way. Hopefully, bombing the target successfully. Again, hopefully, and then rinse and repeat as your bombers have to find their way home. For the Germans, they of course have the opposite problem. They have a vast array of defenses and options, but they're going to experience the frustration of the defender in a bombing campaign where you never seem to have enough fighters to cover all the possible approaches. You have a vast range of ground defenses, and you have options. I mean, I love the elegance. As I've said in the previous videos, the fact that you can take your ground defense counters and you can have them as one thing, or you can have them as another, depending on the kind of the way in which you want to defend a particular areas. You can adjust your strategy. The Germans, like the British, have choices, but they also have deep frustrations, and I think this game really beautifully models that. Of course, a particular frustration for the German player is that you will spread these defenses over all your vulnerable points, and you do have a lot of vulnerable points. But you know that depending on what your wily British opponent is up to, they will be bypassing most of those. And if you've chosen your positions poorly, the British will happily skip past them. I shouldn't really use the flippant word skip, but you know that many of your anti-aircraft guns will not go into action on a given mission. It's just the way that it is. And when it comes to your real mobile defenses by way of your fighter squadrons, you have the problem that then even though you outnumber the available British fighter defences, you never seem to have enough to cover the available ground. The very clever rules which govern fuel usage will always be there, hampering you. Even a squadron that successfully follows the British for a period of time will. Sorry, I'm going to reach over and grab one of these. Will always be looking nervously at their fuel gauge because every move is going to slowly tick it down towards that awkward moment where you have to land. And so they've got different things to worry about, different concerns. The two sides, and I've played both sides quite a lot, they feel very different to each other. And that's one of the great things about a game which is really quite simple in its mechanics. Now, of course, the demonstration video I uploaded previously just shows you that the game in its most basic form, with the only advanced rule that I used being the weather change option. But if you want, after a few plays, to ratchet the level up, what I find incredible about this design is how much it can accommodate by way of expansion. Now, I of course mentioned but did not actually play Baby Blitz in the previous video. By the way, if any of you want a playthrough using the complete rules, please let me know and I will very happily do one. It might take quite a while because unlike the basic version, there really is a lot going on. When you you add the British map extension. But the cleverness of Friedemann de Pedro's design is that you can bolt on as little or as much as you want from the optional rules, and even leaving aside Baby Blitz, there's a plethora of options. There's even on the German side a counter for the wild boar Wildesau. I don't speak German, so I'm sorry for my pronunciation. But the Fokker Wolf 190 squadrons that dabbled in a bit of night fighting. And if you want some slight additions to the British from the expansions, you've even got tactical ones like bomber formations that can split. And this is the essence of the decoying that I mentioned in a previous video. There's also window. The British can attempt to confuse German radar. And on the German side, again, although I mentioned these, I didn't show you any cards or anything. The Germans, of course, if you play Baby Blitz, have to do their own mission planning in order to attack the British Isles. While at the same time, if again you want to play with these are the control cards for up to 3 doodlebugs, which you can send over Britain at the same time. So you have an awful lot of command and control, but what I find really impressive is that even if you go all in and add all of these expansions, and just to give you an idea of what would be involved, at the bottom corner of my box, I have kept all the aircraft and the doodlebugs from all the expansions that I possess. And bear in mind, I don't possess all the expansions. You can have a lot of planes in the sky doing a lot of things, but the essential simplicity of the system allows you to control all these without ever feeling that you're being overburdened with detail. You may get analysis paralysis on the strategic side of things, but then that's half the fun of war games, I think. So it really is a splendid package, which to some might seem surprisingly simpler than it looks. And on the other hand, once you throw in a lot of the expansions, may actually surprise people by having more depth than it appears to have at first glance. And of course, at the end of the day, underneath all these layers of complexity, or not, if you so choose, is the very basic objective both sides have, which is to get ahead in victory points. Once you're familiar with how the flow of the game works, you know pretty much what you have to do. The Germans really, in order to get the majority of their points, have to keep angling for those aerial interceptions because that's where they get their points. The British have to just absorb those blows, much like the bombers had to in real life, just grinding stolidly forward in the face of opposition, hoping that the trade-off for you will be an accurate bombing run over your target city so that you can wipe out any gains the Germans have made in points, and then somehow make it home still with a balance of points. If anyone's curious, I did finish off the game that I halted last night, and the British got home with a 3 victory point difference. So it often comes down to a very narrow win for one side or the other. I suppose one question to raise is there anything I would improve about this game? And actually, on the whole, I'm tempted to say no. I think this game does what it does really, really well. And I can't suggest any house rules or anything that would alter gameplay for the better. Let's put it that way. As it is, and in terms of what it is and what it's trying to achieve, I think this is one of the most beautiful games I've seen, that in terms of its design and the execution of that design that covers the British bombing campaign against Germany. If you really want greater levels of complexity, there are other games out there by other companies that cover that kind of thing pretty well. But really, what I think in relation to this game, the important question is, what do you want out of your game? I love Duel in the Dark because I think it has very broad appeal for gamers of all ages and abilities. This is a game that you could teach a fairly young child to play in fairly short order. it teaches you an awful lot about the campaign, but without exposing you too much to the inherent horrors of what a strategic bombing campaign involves. Now, it's a fine line that any war game has to tread, but in when you come to a horrific subject like human conflict, strategic bombing campaigns are not exactly the most pleasant thing out there. Um, but I think this game touches on it just enough to help instill an understanding, at least of the practicalities of what's involved in a strategic bombing campaign. It's very light on the human consequences. Of course, most war games are. We distill it down to victory points. And what impressed me is that the this game even manages to inject the barest touch of humor. I like the fact that in the rule book it says that if you can't decide who's going to play British and German or German, the German player is the one whose seat is closest to the exit. I mean, yes, okay. It did make me chuckle. Um, but in terms of an entry level game where you could teach it to a young person to play for educational purposes, if you think they might be interested in getting into wargaming in future years as a hobby, you could do a lot worse than Duel in the Dark as an introductory game. It sits somewhere in my mind between being a war game and what I'm a bit wary of the term Euro game, but it does have elements of a Euro game in it. But I think it compromises between the two very, very well. Um, do you know, now that I think about it, there's probably only one thing that I would alter about Duel in the Dark, and I have actually gone ahead and done this. I love these. I really, really love these. The aesthetically, it really works for me. However, I mean, these are great for the German side. These are great for the British side. But if you want to indulge in if you I suppose what I'm trying to say is this counter, impressive though it is, doesn't really do justice to a formation of bombers that could be anything between 600 and approaching 1,000 planes strong. So I feel that if you want to put something on your map that is genuinely worthy of Bomber Harris, then you need to get onto, and I'm afraid the product placement is inevitable, get onto Corgi, the toy maker, or someone similar, and get yourself one of these, because there's nothing like having a massive, great three-dimensional Lancaster on your board, and if you have your light in the right place, this monster actually casts a shadow on the map below it, and I find that effect is incredible. Um, Serendipitously, the little hole at the bottom actually does fit the game's stand. So, because bomber streams can't change altitude mid-game, generally speaking, if you want to do a high altitude raid, you just fit it onto one of these. If you want your bombers to do a low altitude run, fit it to one of these. And just because I felt I had to, I got the standard Lancaster. I think that's a Mark III. But I also decided to get one of the Dam Busters Lancasters, because every now and then you want to pretend you're on a Dam Busters raid. Even though, you know, your target might be a bit historically incorrect, but it looks good on the game board. Um, I bought these for $4.99 many, many years ago. They've probably gone up since. But that is literally the only thing I would alter about Duel in the Dark. If you're into the history of the Second World War, if you're interested in the conduct of an air offensive at a strategic level, particularly, then I would say this really is the game for you. And if you want something that plays quickly within a very reasonable time, that you can play either as a one off, a single night's mission, and then you shake hands and go, or if you want to make a campaign of it, the game supports both. I didn't mention the campaigns previously, so I'll mention them now. This game has a very well developed campaign system. And there's even rules for the British and German bombers earning medals for good play, which they can. I should say British bombers, German fighters earning medals for good play, which they can then cash in for bonuses in future missions. It's a wonderful mechanic, again, like the rest of the game. Really simple, but well thought out and very well executed. So if you do manage to get access to or even purchase a copy of this game, I would say do it. I don't think you'll be disappointed. It was my introduction to Friedemann de Pedro's designs. It was the first of his games I ever played, and I was hooked, and I still am hooked. So, yes, go out there, try it. I think you will not be disappointed in the slightest by the experience. So, I hope that the series has been useful in giving you an idea of what Duel in the Dark is and what it's like and how it plays. If you have any questions for me or if you'd like any fuller playthroughs, please do say. But otherwise, all it remains for me to do for this video is to thank you all for sticking with me, for following the series. I really appreciate your company as always, and I hope that you found this useful and informative. So until we next meet in the next video, whoever you are, wherever you're watching from, thank you very much for tuning in. Bye.